Hi, my name is Rachel Bailing, and I am the program and outreach person for the Fashion History Museum. And today I'm taking a bit of a field trip. I am in Elmira, Ontario, here to visit with my dear friend, Carol Campbell of Seeing Squared. So let's go see what her workshop looks like. Follow me. Hi, Carol, how are you?
I'm fine, come on in, good to see you.
Nice to see you too. Everybody meet Carol, my dear friend, and
Hello.
the mastermind behind Seeing Squared, excuse me. Look at this place, it's magical.
This is me in my happy spot when nobody else says what it should look like or what should be where.
Wow, I don't even know where to start. It's just amazing. And it's so organized. This is not what my workshop looks like, let me tell you. So I just would love to share with our friends today everything about the process that you go through for your reworking of pieces, and what's your inspiration.
Okay.
Would you like to take us on a bit of a tour and we can just chat as we
Sure,
go?
sure.
Okay.
I can show you around and we can talk about things as we come across them.
Great.
So right in here, I have things that I work with. And over there where I've pulled back the curtain are some things that are finished. And then more materials. So as you said, it's all very organized. That's partly my personality, and then I had library training, so it all has to be just so. A lot of times I'm working mostly with color, which is why things are organized by color, but there are certain types of materials that the fiber content matters more than the color. So leather is separate from the rest of things. Silk is stored very carefully because it can fade easily, and silk has to be hand washed, so I'm not going to throw a piece of silk in with something that is rayon and polyester and all the rest of it. I've got a lot of scarves and shawls. When I want to use them, I am looking for that shape and that size, so I put them there. So a lot of it is just how I think and what I look for, but I love baskets, I love little boxes, and I like things organized. So the ribbon is there, and some projects. So there aren't many places where you find a bin labeled eyeballs. It's great, but that's what's in there because I have, way up there you can see some hats, and you can see some other things that I got thinking that it would be fun to play around with them. So I have been making eyeballs to make creatures. Wow. And so that's my basket of eyeballs.
Wow.
In with all the ribbons and trimmings and stuff like that.
I've had it with reality. I want my fairy godmother. That's perfect. Don't we all feel that way? So how many of these pieces, are they all donated? Where do you find, is it kind of a mixture of
There's
things?
a big mixture of things. Some of it is stuff that I've collected since I was very little, because I have been sewing for a long time and making things for a long time. Some of them are pieces that I got from my grandmother or from my mother, or so there's some that came that way. There are things that are donated. People say, you can use this, I don't know what to do with it, could you take it from me? There are people who trade. There are also times when I see something and I will actually spend money on it. So some of these do cost. I buy at thrift shops. I will occasionally buy in retail, but that's mostly for things like glue and elastic, things that have to be new. Old elastic is not worth my while to put in because it's going to fall apart. It's going to go crackly. So there are a few things I will buy new, but pretty much everything is has been out and about before I got at it.
Wow. So is this something you've been doing all your life?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Do you remember how young you started?
Probably around 4.
Wow. Do you remember your first project?
I have my first project.
Do you?
Yes, not here.
Oh.
It's at home. I have my first embroidery project. I had done probably some doll clothes and stuff like that, but it was a little square of gingham, and I was learning how to do cross stitch. So it was up and down and up and down and all on the gingham, and that's, I still have that.
4. My goodness, you can never start too early. So would you mind taking us through the process? Even just pick something and you can share with us how you look at it, how you recreated it.
So if somebody brings me, sometimes people bring me one thing or one or two things, but usually it's I've cleared something out, and so I'm getting a bag of things, and I don't necessarily know I don't usually know what's in there. So when I open the bag, I'm going through, and if I occasionally will have a very visceral reaction to something that I don't like. Polyester I don't do well with polyester.
Many people don't.
Yes. So there are some things that I just say, I will not work with this. I choose not to work with this. There are some things that I set aside because I cannot work with them. And so fur and feathers are two of those things for allergies or whatever. So I will sort, but as I'm sorting as to what I can keep and use and what I will not keep, sometimes I pick something up and right away I know what I want to do with this. Now that may change because I've got enough stuff on the go, so I don't say I know what I want to do with this and I'm going to do it right now. But I'll pick the piece up and I will set it aside. So I have another rack, especially if I want to combine it with something in particular. So over here, I've got groupings of things that either I know what I'm going to do with them or I've said these need to go together.
Oh.
So then they get shelved together. So there was this piece. And one of the things I did not like about it was this great big band, black band across the back. And I'm pretty sure that somebody added it afterwards, except the label is over the top of it. But it looked like somebody added it afterwards to hide the back of the bra. And I thought, that's just tacky looking. It could at least have been the same navy blue.
Exactly, or sparkly.
Or sparkly or something. So I liked the beadwork on that.
It's lovely.
And it's not, I like the straight lines because it's glittery, but it's not too much. Well, while I was opening that bag, I found some of this fabric. It's not quite the same, but it can work with it. And when you have two that are not quite the same, it doesn't look right. But if you add a third that's not quite the same, or maybe even a fourth, then you've got a grouping of colors.
Look at that. And it actually makes this sparkle more.
Exactly. And so we've got different textures. Some is see-through, some is not, some is slippery, some is not. And I've got this in here as well. So those all work well together. And I would like to, I've left the band on here because that measures the distance. This is how this is supposed to drape. So that is my marking.
Okay.
But I would like to have something that whether it looks like it's layered or it's just, it's got to work in there, and maybe increase the length. Is this going to have some slits and some ruffly bits added? I'm not sure. But as I've unpacked, these were things I found that went together. So then I just wrap them all up. And when I'm looking for something new to work on, this is one of the places I come. So that's what some of this area is.
Great.
I sometimes have a specific project in mind. So it could be for a client or an idea that I've had and I want to test it. And then I go looking for the right materials or the right base garment or whatever. So these two shelves are men's shirts, dress shirts, work shirts, but they are all men's shirts. So they are going to have a similar cut. They are going to have a similar weight fabric. And that means that it's easy to combine them. even if the sizes aren't quite the same or whatever. So there are quite a few different things I've played with men's shirts. I don't want to mix them in with the rest of my stuff because I'm looking for that. So I've got things that I have played with here with the men's shirt.
I was going to say, speaking of men's shirts.
So this one had a stain just below the waistline, and it was a very big men's shirt. So what I did was I wove it into more of a bomber jacket type thing.
Look at this.
And put some texture there. So when you think of a cover-up for the beach, or summer evenings where it's hot, but you know you're going to need something when the sun goes down, fully washable. This was t-shirt yarn that I put in between. So strips of t-shirt and just woven in there. And it was a stained t-shirt. So I make sure it's clean. So the stain is like dye, but I get rid of the dirt. And then that's all cut up, and it didn't matter that the t-shirt had holes and so on. And now that's a perfectly usable jacket or light shirt. So that's one of the things I've done with men's shirts.
So it's a new life for not just one
Completely.
piece. Probably, what would you say, 3 pieces going into something like that when you count in the t-shirts?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
And I've done this sort of thing, and the sleeves have gone on to something else. Here's one that looks shapeless on a hanger, but when the waist pulls this up, so this was a curtain or a valance.
Wow.
And I wove that in, so you've got the layers and sort of a peplum on there. And again, that's all cotton, so it's very comfortable.
Great.
And now this was a women's shirt. You can see the line is a little different, but there's no reason this wouldn't work with a men's shirt. Basically, it's changing the shape of it.
Right. And again, I love the difference in textures.
Yes. And when these are out of style for home, or if they've got a stain or a mark or a tear or something like that, then find another way to use them because the lace is still good.
That's great with a pair of jeans or
Yes.
again over a bathing suit.
Yes.
Great
Yes.
idea. Oh, look at the colors in this.
So the collar came off. The buttonholes I made larger so that I could put in some nice bright buttons because shirt buttons were a waste on this. The sleeves were shortened. So the collar was worn, the cuffs on the sleeves were worn. So there was a lot that you couldn't use as a shirt. And then this was a thrift store find. It was a piece of wax resist African cloth. And I really just liked it with the green. So
It's great.
I grafted it on with the weaving, and you've got a shirt dress.
And again, it's actually a bit of a 40s style.
Yeah,
When I
with
think
the
that,
colors and
yeah,
the, yeah.
and the silhouette, and those buttons just pull everything together. It looks great.
Thank you.
Now I like your weaving because what it does is it could make things larger or smaller depending
Yes.
on the client who you're working
Yes.
with, which
And
is nice.
then I can play with a different style of weaving. So when I was talking about the shawls and the scarves, and I want long fluttery strips, this would be one of the things that I would do with them. So this is ribbons and fabric and so on. This dress still had the tags on it, but had probably been worn by maybe 100 women. So what it was a sample dress from something like a bridal boutique. And it had a lace overlay, and it was a synthetic lace, a soft one, so it had started to pill, and it definitely was worn. So this dress had been on and off and on and off and on and off, never worn probably for more than 10 minutes, but it looked really shop worn. Now the rest of the dress was fine. And it wasn't sweaty. It didn't have the kind of internal damage. It had the outside one from going off and on. So this is the back of it, by the way.
Okay. The buttons.
So here's the front, and I just cut off very, very carefully the lace, and then took all these similar colors. Some of the ribbons weren't as wide as I wanted, so I stitched them together decoratively. and then I just wove those. So you've got a fluttery, it's dressy, but it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Love it. What a great piece. If this could be a bridal piece quite easily.
It could. That's presumably what it was before. But that's what we've got now.
So Carol, when you're working on a project, how much waste is left?
There are things that have virtually no waste, just
Okay.
because of the way I work them and the way I cut them. There are always scraps, and then the scraps get used, and the scraps from that are scraps, and so on. So there's a child's fairy dress. It's a wraparound dress. So it works for sizes, and that way it's not one of these things that your child outgrows quickly. It lasts longer. But if you look closely, it's got all these layers of tatters, and these are just offcuts from other things. And all I did was go to my scrap bin and pull together anything that was in this color family, and then I made strips of them bunched together and sewed them on. So I alternated this lace trim that somebody gave me with the other part. Now, as that washes, they will fray a little bit, they'll get softer, but it still is a very nice fluffy dress, and there was nothing left after that.
Perfect. So any little bits can become a fairy dress. I like that.
There was a sweater that came in and it was missing a button, so I took those buttons off and replaced with buttons from something else, but the buttons that came off would be enough for a sweater that didn't have as many buttonholes. And so they, you can use pretty much everything.
Right. But it's the eye. It's the expert.
There is
eye.
that. And knowing what is worth using.
Right.
There are some things that aren't worth putting in. So t-shirts that come in with the sweat stains under the arms, those are, there's a dress over here. It's not a t-shirt, but I'm making some changes over here. So this dress, I've already started taking apart. It has a huge collar, like this. Oops, and those are the sleeves.
Oh, wow.
So there's the dress, and it had 2 shoulder pads and some very long, puffy, skinny sleeves. So one of the problems with the dress was that this material has no give to it. So if there's any bulk at all, it's a little bit restrictive. But the other problem was this discoloration around here
Oh, I see.
and around there. So what I decided was to scale it down. Instead of being a big statement Victorian style, I'm looking more at a tunic type thing. So the collar came off, the shoulder pads are gone, so I'm going to have to take up some of the extra, change the shape there. But if I cut around here and just open around the armhole a bit, then this will have more ease.
Right.
If somebody decides they want to layer it instead of wearing it as a sleeveless dress, there would be room for another sleeve to come through, that kind of thing. And I will be changing the buttons. So the collar is out, and I will need to stabilize this and stitch it all shut again. But then you've got a dress that instead of saying this era, says anytime.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a fan of the shell buttons, and I think the colors would go very nicely there. So this will be a very scaled back, more of an elegant than a fluffy type dress.
Whereas somebody else would look at that and say either too dated or damaged.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing something with the sweat stains.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
And I don't know, I don't know what was done to try to remove this, but I don't need to fiddle with that and try washing it several times, because the design says I'm just cutting out the offending thing. So then I don't need to worry that if somebody washes it a certain way, the stain's going to come back.
Great. I like the color. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So there's a collar sitting there on your mannequin.
Yes. So what happened was that collar was on a full party dress, and I took the skirt of the dress to make a cape.
Oh.
I took the bodice of the dress to cut a bodice for a fairy dress. And then I was looking at this collar, and now the blue has nothing to do with it. That's just was already on the mannequin before I put this on. And I'm thinking, so what do I do with just the collar? Because if I try to take that apart, there's a lot of work in taking things apart, especially taking them apart carefully. So I need to know that there's an efficient way to use this. It's not necessarily every scrap as much as it is every scrap well used.
Right.
So I put it on just to see how it would sit, and I'm figuring I'm likely going to add some shoulder straps, a nice front closure, and then some fluttery organza so that it's a big solid collar securely attached with this ruffly cape underneath, but only maybe down to here. So then it's got the contrast, the glossy and the matte, the solid and firm, and the fluffy lightweight, but it needs to sit better on the shoulders because it doesn't have the dress to hold it in place.
What a great piece over maybe a strapless wedding dress.
Yes, or over a little black dress.
Right.
Or with jeans.
Yes.
It would be fun that way too.
Great idea.
So it's just saying, okay, what is it now that I can use? And if I can't use it as is, then I start looking at other things. But
so one dress 3 ways.
Yep.
Wow.
But this is another thing that came in missing a button. And it is a women's suit jacket. So think it's the same wool, but it doesn't have all the stiffening and it doesn't have the lapels. So it's a softer version with the authority of a suit jacket.
Yes.
Okay?
A little bit Chanel.
A little bit, but it isn't one.
No. You wouldn't cut up a Chanel.
No, there are things that intimidate me.
Yeah.
That's one of them. So I needed to do something about the buttons. And the problem, one of the things I could have done was, it's also got the cuff buttons, and often with suits, these are the same style buttons, but a size smaller. And these are the same size.
Oh.
So I thought I could take one off here and then replace the 4 on the cuffs, and the job is done. But I find this just a little bit too much, a bit too formal. The gold was too strong for me. So I started playing around because I didn't know what I wanted to put in with it instead. So this is a silk tie cut into strips. And then I had this long piece of spaghetti to start making pictures with. So I doodled a butterfly on the back, and you can see it's pinned in place, and that's just a long piece of tie. And then I thought, okay, where else is that going to go? So I put one on the shoulder, and I wanted some smaller bits. I found some cord that I had that was close enough to the right color. And so there will be a small butterfly where this blotch is, and another small butterfly down there. So this will have the butterflies there, and it's still, it's not all frilly. It's very smooth, it's very reserved. It is a conservative coloring, so it can still work in a business sense, but it adds that little breath. So after I cut the tie into strips, everybody knows the ties are wider at the bottom, I had a little bit of tie fabric left over, so I made some self-cover buttons, and those are going to go on instead. So that gives us, it's silk, so it's strong, it's smooth, so it will slide nicely, and I think that is not nearly as officious as the brass buttons are.
And as people are starting to return back to work, this is a great piece to wear.
Yeah.
That's still classic.
But it's comfortable.
Fun. And it's
Yeah.
fun. It's
Yeah.
got that personality, so you get to know what that person is like. You see that fun side, as
Yeah.
opposed to it just always being very stately and austere almost.
And now it's relegated to the mannequin for a while because I happen to have this tattered piece, and I am trying to decide if any of the butterflies get colored in. And so this is why I end up with several mannequins full, because I I'm just going to look at it and think about it for a while, and different days and different moods, and change my mind about 15 times before I start cutting up and sewing. But that's the buttons again.
Wow. Well on your way. So Carol, this piece is intriguing. Can you tell me its story?
Okay, this was an upholstery sample, and I liked the fabric. The stripes are not overwhelming, but I wanted to play around with it. And in the back of my mind, I had an idea for a cape that I wanted to do. So this to me was the ideal piece for it. It's upholstery weight, but it's pure cotton. It wasn't quite big enough, so I paired it up with another upholstery weight pure cotton. So what I was looking for was a spring summer type cape, and the colors suit it perfectly.
Yes.
The only shaping, this is a zero waste piece, because what I did was I did some reinforcement stitching along here, then I cut strips, and all of this shaping is done by weaving and plaiting the strips together. And then they're woven back down on the inside. So what's left, there's the armhole, is I have some finishing up to do, but I also was a bit concerned about the abrupt change between the plain and the fancy. So I pulled together some artificial flowers that are not an exact match, but they're close enough.
Right.
And these are, by and large, machine washable. You take them apart, get rid of the plastic pieces, sew them on. They can go, you'll see a little bit of softening within the first time or two through the washer and dryer. But I did a test sample, and I just wrote about this in my blog, by the way. I did a test sample, and every time I was doing a load that was going through the washer and the dryer, they just got thrown in. And between the first and the second load, you could see a difference, and I took pictures. Between the second and the 10th, there was no noticeable difference. By 40 times through, the flowers still had not fallen apart, and I decided they were definitely softer. You could see the difference, but I said at this point, something that can be washed and dried 40 times, I will call machine washable. Twice is not machine washable, 40 times is. So that opened up all these shapes and colors pre-made with silk flowers that are not actually silk, they're polyester. So I'm going to be able to put them just scattered around, but to soften the straight lines, because those straight lines don't belong on this cape. So that will be an unlined cloak or cape. It hasn't been hemmed yet either, so we'll have to sort out a length, but that's what I've done there.
The blossom cape.
Yes,
Lovely.
flowers. I do a fair bit with flowers. I like to see the little things around, so I've been doing some things with the weeds that grow normally in this area, just saying, hey, take a look, I'm worth looking at. Look closely at, well, the daisies we know. How closely have we looked at buttercups? How closely have we looked at clover? It's not just a ball, it's all these little, all those bits and pieces. What do you really see when you're walking along the side of the road or down a field or something like that?
It's your form of poetry.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So they're flowers that, like, when I had worn through the knees in these jeans and everything else was fine. So the holes are under here. And what I did was I open up the side seam so that I'm dealing with a flat piece, but I don't open it all the way down because I don't want to have to redo the hem, and I don't want to have to redo all the pocket stuff. But then I have a place to open it up. And then I have a special presser foot on my sewing machine that lets me, instead of sewing in straight lines, just doodle all over the place. So I did, and I doodled, but I doodled very heavily, and then that is 3 layers for this and 3 layers for that. So there's 6 layers of fabric over top. So this is my patch, my industrial strength patch on both knees. And I just played around, and that will last a good long time.
And again, as we know, denim is one of the most prevalent forms of waste.
Yes.
Right now.
Yes.
So why not? These are
Exactly.
favorite pants. You don't need to throw them away.
Exactly. And there's no spandex in them, so they will last.
Wow.
Denim that has spandex in it does not last because the rubber in the spandex gives out. But these will last, so it's now a little more decorative. You will not mistake these for somebody else's jeans that started looking the same.
Personalized.
These are mine.
Awesome.
So would you like to see something I've done featuring the buttercups?
Of course.
Would you like to try it on? I'll bring it to you.
Of course.
Okay.
Look at this. Wow.
This was a coat, a winter coat. I'll put the buttons up for you.
Thank you. Oh my. It's really light. I thought it was going to be heavier.
No, so this is a probably wool, but I'm not certain because the contents weren't labeled. This was the original coat was all lined, and the fabric is by Castle. It was made in France, but that's all I know about them. And it was a standard coat. It was not a cape. It was all of this material, and it had a big stain right under this flower and another bit there. So beautiful coat, and it had buttons that I hated. It has pockets, so it was material that I liked. Unfortunately, it's got all this detailing and everything else, so if I wanted to make something out of it, I've got all these little curved pieces. And so I started thinking that maybe I could convert the coat to a cape. And there were a few things. One was that this lets me make a very tailored cape without doing the tailoring.
Right, it's all done for you.
All of this stuff, all of this work, I didn't touch at all. I replaced the buttons. I took out the sleeve. Normally, if you look, a shirt or a garment will come out and then down. And what I did was I trimmed that line to be a smooth line. I took the top of the sleeve that was in there, and with this coordinating fabric, I cut that line here so that I didn't have to change the shoulder pads or the shape here or anything like that. And then I just stretched it out, and I put buttercups on it.
Wow.
So the buttercups are out of upholstery velvet, and buttercups have that rich shine to them. So the upholstery velvet let me do that. And the centers of them were from chewed spots on a wool scarf.
Are you kidding me?
So
Wow, look at that. And they have some fluff to them.
yes.
Wow. And what
So-
about the leaves?
The leaves were a different scarf, and it hadn't been, I think this was rodent chewed. I think this was caught on a nail or something like that, but it was another torn scarf. But it's a nice, really thin wool, and once again, using the presser foot on my machine that lets me just doodle all over the place, I put them on there and stitch them in. Then I have a little hand felter that binds the fibers, so I just poked it lots to put some of that through to the back. You can see, so that is going to withstand whatever cleaning that it normally would.
The buttercup cape.
Yep.
My goodness. So a lot of your influence comes from nature.
Yes,
That's what I'm seeing.
it's what I see
Yeah.
around me. Yeah.
Right.
Now the other thing is that it's not just supplies that I don't like wasting. I don't like wasting ideas either. So the butterfly doodles will show up in other things. These buttercups, I have more of this fabric, and I have the sleeves that I took off there. So the plan is to make some bags
Oh, great.
that can have the buttercups on that color because we know they work well together. That means bags don't have to be sized to fit certain people, and bags are more affordable. So if somebody likes this, it's a smaller purchase, and they tend to get used more. You might wear this every week for a season. Is it something you are going to wear for years and years, or are you somebody who changes out your clothes every year?
Right.
Whereas a bag, if you're going to use it, you're going to use it all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it lets me stretch the ideas as well. I don't have to redraw those. I can just take that and use it there,
Right.
and then take it and use it somewhere else.
Right. And you're creating a brand of sorts.
Yes.
Of your own.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is really lovely, and it feels real. It's very light, but it would create. I mean, it's wool, so it would keep you nice and warm. But boy, what a statement! This may have to come home with a very lucky person. I just love it. I think it's great, and of course that classic look. What I look for in the vintage world, of course, is that classic design. But I love the
It's
twist.
not locked in an era.
No, it's just lovely.
Because for me, some of the addressing the waste is not just what gets thrown out, but how long do you wear something? Are you going to buy it and then 3 times later it's gone? Or are you going to say it needs a change, it needs something different? Why don't I change it up? How can I use it differently? And sometimes changing it up is accessorizing. Sometimes it's changing the buttons, or you love it and something spilled on it, so it's dealing with the stains or the wear and tear. But if it was a good garment before, it can still be something good afterwards. Not necessarily a garment, but it can still be something good afterwards.
And I think we as consumers need to start thinking that way.
Yes.
To keep things out of landfill, to stop inundating thrift stores and whatnot with things that they just get
not
overrun.
only at that end, but at the sweatshop end. If we don't keep buying things, then they don't have to produce at the ridiculous rates, and then they can get some breathing space in there.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
My mind is just full of ideas. I just can't execute them. So I may just have to come back and learn some new tricks.
Yeah.
But thank you. Thank you so much. You've been such an inspiration to me over the years, and now many of us will in turn get creative. And you have a blog, you say.
I have just finally started a blog after years of saying that's the last thing I want to do. Because I can't fix and repurpose everything. It's not possible.
Right.
So I'm putting out the ideas, the basic techniques. Eventually I hope to get some proper patterns in there, but I need to learn how to make those so that they are sellable, not just the work pieces that I work with, because it has to be something that other people can follow.
So can people direct any questions to you though?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Sure.
And you're on Instagram?
I am on Instagram as well.
Okay. So this is Carol, Seeing Squared.
Yes.
With a D on the end, not seeing squares. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for coming by.
I'm gonna be back.